for an AU meeting in June last year. Al-Bashir is wanted by the International Criminal Court for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in Darfur. The High Court has ruled that as an ICC signatory, South Africa had been obliged to arrest Al-Bashir and hand him over to the ICC. Well, proceedings are underway in the Supreme Court of Appeal. For more, we cross to our reporter, Aldrin Sampear. Aldrin, good afternoon. So let's phrase a legal question here. Is this case a moot point?
Well, good afternoon, Natasha. Yes, that's the case that's currently underway. Discussions arguments around whether this matter is moot or not. Remember that the North Gauteng High Court made that order last year and said that, listen, the matter is moot considering that you can't effect the warrant of arrest. Omar Al-Bashir is no longer in the country. While the argument coming from government, whose representative, Jeremy Gauntlet, is here, argues that if this matter is not challenged, it then sets a precedent which would mean that South Africa can't host any global events where heads of state would be expected to meet in the country, especially when some of those heads of state are people wanted by the International Criminal Court. So they're basically challenging the assertion from the North Gauteng High Court that this matter is moot, considering the implications that it will have and the consequences that it will have for not only government but this entire nation.
Aldrin, it's Trengrove and Gauntlet facing off again. We saw them earlier in the week at the Concord. Will Trengrove for the SA Litigation Centre, he's arguing why it contends that government contravened the Constitution by not arresting Al-Bashir.
And that's the argument that they've been able to argue on and win 3 times already. Remember when they went to the High Court and asked for an urgent interdict to get government not to stop Al-Bashir from leaving the country. Al-Bashir then subsequently left. The other argument was the main argument around the warrant of arrest. They won that argument, and when government tried to apply for leave to appeal the North Gauteng High Court ruling, the Southern African Litigation Centre also won that argument. And their argument is basically based on that South Africa is a signatory to the Rome Statute, and the Rome Statute is the founding document of the ICC. And the big question here is whether the Rome Statute trumps the Immunities Act. And remember that sitting heads of state have immunity when they face criminal charges and so forth. And the argument from government is that you can't carry out such a warrant of arrest considering that there is this Immunities Act. And something that the justices here have been grappling with as well is whether the Rome Statute, considering that it is a document which was signed by more than 130 countries across the world, whether that document trumps the Immunities Act, as well as whether the Implementations Act also trumps the Immunities Act.
So it's essentially the Rome Statute versus immunity, which is what Will Gauntlet is arguing, that the court had no power to order his detention. But what I want to ask you, Aldrin, is will Gauntlet again concede, or how winnable or not is this?
Well, considering that, as I mentioned earlier, and the Southern African Litigation Centre has already won 3 times already. It's a try on their side. They've been able to convince the North Gauteng, the full bench of the North Gauteng High Court, why South Africa was wrong, why it contravened the Constitution, and why it should have arrested Omar Al-Bashir. Chances are probably this time as well they might win, but this time we are sitting with a full bench of 5 justices instead of 3 that we saw at the North Gauteng High Court. So time will tell where this matter will sit. But we also, for instance, if you listen back to an interview that one of our colleagues had with the International Criminal Court's prosecutor, she indicated that chances are that this matter will go all the way to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court will have to set the record straight on what South Africa's role should be when it comes to arresting sitting heads of state who are facing crimes against humanity as well as war crimes, and who have warrants of arrest issued against them by the ICC.
All right, Aldrin, thank you very much for that update. We'll leave it there. Aldrin Sampear live from the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein.